You know what makes me absolutely sick? Everyone wants to act like May 26, 2023 was just another SmackDown episode, just another chapter in the Bloodline saga, but what really happened that night when the Bloodline confronted Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens was the most disgraceful, most disrespectful display of wasted potential in modern wrestling history, and I'm done staying silent about it. WWE had lightning in a bottle, they had the most organically over storyline in years, and they absolutely destroyed it for corporate greed and backstage politics that nobody wants to acknowledge. Before you click away or start typing hate comments, I challenge you to watch this entire video because what I'm about to expose will make you question everything WWE told you about this feud. Drop a comment right now telling me if you think the Bloodline story peaked too early or if WWE deliberately sabotaged it, because this isn't just about one confrontation, this is about a company that refuses to give fans what they actually want. Let's get into this, and I'm warning you, by the end of this video you're going to be as furious as I am. SmackDown on May 26, 2023 should have been the night that solidified Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens as the biggest babyface team in wrestling. The crowd was nuclear for them, the storytelling had been absolutely perfect for months, and the Bloodline confrontation was supposed to be the moment that took everything to the next level. But instead, what did we get? A watered-down, predictable, paint-by-numbers segment that felt like it was written by committee and approved by executives who have never felt genuine emotion in their entire lives. The Bloodline came out, Sami and KO stood tall, everyone said their lines like they were reading from a teleprompter, and absolutely nothing of consequence happened. No shocking twists, no character development, no progression that mattered. Just another segment to fill time between commercials and promote whatever WWE wanted to sell that week. And the worst part is that fans ate it up because WWE has conditioned everyone to accept mediocrity as excellence. Let me take you back to why this matters so much and why this particular confrontation was such a massive disappointment. Sami Zayn's story with the Bloodline was the best thing WWE had done in years. An underdog slowly earning respect, infiltrating the most dominant faction, forming genuine bonds, and then having it all fall apart in the most emotionally devastating way possible. When Sami finally turned on Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble, it was cathartic, it was earned, it was everything wrestling is supposed to be. Kevin Owens reuniting with his best friend added another layer of emotional depth that made the story feel real and important. These weren't just wrestlers feuding, these were characters with history, with motivations, with genuine stakes. And for a brief moment, WWE had created something that transcended wrestling and became actual storytelling that anyone could connect with regardless of whether they cared about wrestling or not. But here's where WWE's incompetence and short-term thinking destroyed everything. Instead of letting this story breathe and develop naturally, they rushed it. Instead of building to an explosive confrontation that would leave fans desperate for more, they gave us the SmackDown segment that felt like a mandatory checkpoint rather than an organic progression. The Bloodline confronted Sami and KO, and it was exactly what you'd expect with zero surprises or risks taken. Roman talked about respect and acknowledged the tribal chief, Solo Sikoa looked menacing in the background, the Usos did their twin thing, and Sami and KO fired back with scripted comebacks that sounded like they went through 17 rewrites to remove anything remotely edgy or interesting. Where was the danger? Where was the unpredictability? Where was the sense that anything could happen? It was sanitized, corporate-approved wrestling theater, and it made me want to throw my remote through the television. Think about what this segment could have been if WWE had any courage whatsoever. Imagine if the Bloodline didn't just confront Sami and KO verbally but actually put them in a real dangerous situation. Imagine if tensions escalated to the point where someone broke character or went off script. Imagine if WWE allowed their performers to show genuine emotion instead of following predetermined talking points. But that would require WWE to trust their talent, and we all know they stopped doing that years ago. Everything is scripted down to the last word, every gesture is choreographed, every camera angle is planned weeks in advance. There's no room for spontaneity or real human emotion, which is exactly why modern WWE feels so sterile and lifeless compared to what wrestling used to be. The Bloodline confronting Sami and KO should have felt dangerous and unpredictable, instead it felt like a corporate presentation with better lighting. Now I know some of you are already defending WWE in your heads, saying I'm being too harsh, saying the segment was fine and served its purpose. But that's exactly the problem. Fine isn't good enough when you have the best storyline in years. Fine isn't acceptable when fans are emotionally invested beyond anything WWE has produced in the modern era. Fine is what you settle for when you have low standards and have forgotten what great wrestling storytelling actually looks like. The Bloodline saga with Sami Zayn could have been WWE's Breaking Bad, their Game of Thrones, their cultural phenomenon that transcended wrestling. Instead it became just another angle that WWE mismanaged and rushed through because they don't have faith in long-term storytelling anymore. Everything has to pay off immediately, everything has to lead to the next Saudi Arabia show or premium live event, nothing is allowed to simmer and build naturally because patience and artistic vision have been replaced by quarterly earnings reports and corporate mandates. Let me break down exactly what was wrong with this confrontation and why it represents everything broken about modern WWE. First, the positioning was all wrong. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were the most over acts in the entire company, yet WWE insisted on keeping the Bloodline as the dominant force. The crowd was begging to see Sami and KO stand up to Roman, to finally get revenge, to have their moment of triumph. But WWE couldn't let that happen because Roman's reign as champion was more important than organic storytelling. So instead of giving fans what they desperately wanted, we got another chapter of Roman and the Bloodline looking strong while Sami and KO looked like they were just happy to be there. It's backwards booking that prioritizes corporate decisions over fan satisfaction, and it's why WWE keeps bleeding viewers despite having the most talented roster in wrestling history. Second, the dialogue was atrocious. Every word sounded scripted and rehearsed to the point of being robotic. There was no natural flow, no real emotion, no sense that these characters were speaking from genuine places of anger or hurt. Roman delivered his lines like he was reading from cue cards, Sami's comebacks felt sanitized and focus grouped, Kevin Owens, who is normally excellent on the microphone, sounded like he was reciting memorized lines rather than speaking from the heart. And this is what happens when WWE doesn't trust their performers to be themselves. They script everything so heavily that all personality gets drained out, leaving behind hollow shells of characters saying words that sound important but mean nothing. The greatest promos in wrestling history were shoot-inspired or completely improvised. They were real people expressing real emotions. But WWE has become so paranoid about controlling their image that they've eliminated the possibility of real moments happening, and this SmackDown confrontation was the perfect example of that creative cowardice. Third, nothing actually happened. The Bloodline came out, they talked, Sami and KO responded, everyone postured, and then it ended with the promise of a match that we'd already seen variations of multiple times. There was no escalation, no surprise, no moment that made you jump out of your seat or immediately want to tell someone about what just happened. It was filler disguised as important storytelling, and WWE got away with it because fans have been trained to accept breadcrumbs as banquets. In the Attitude Era, a confrontation like this would have ended with chairs flying, blood spilling, and genuine chaos that made you feel like something important just occurred. In the Ruthless Aggression Era, there would have been a betrayal or shocking alliance or some kind of twist that changed the dynamic. But in modern WWE, we get talking segments that lead to predictable matches that lead to more talking segments, and the cycle continues forever with no real stakes or consequences. What really burns me up about this entire situation is that Sami Zayn's connection with the audience was completely organic and genuine, something WWE hasn't been able to manufacture despite spending millions trying. Fans loved Sami because his journey felt real, his emotions felt authentic, his struggle to belong and be accepted resonated on a deeply human level. Kevin Owens amplified that by being the loyal friend who never stopped believing in Sami even when everyone else did. This was storytelling gold, the kind of narrative that creates lifelong fans and transcendent moments. But WWE couldn't help themselves, they had to control it, sanitize it, corporatize it until all the magic was drained away. The May 26th confrontation was supposed to be a climactic moment in this story. Instead, it was a cold reminder that WWE cares more about protecting their brand than creating unforgettable moments. Here's what nobody wants to admit but everyone knows is true. WWE doesn't respect its audience's intelligence anymore. They think fans are idiots who will cheer for whoever is positioned as a good guy and boo whoever is positioned as a bad guy, regardless of whether the storytelling makes sense or the characters feel authentic. The Bloodline confrontation with Sami and KO proved this beyond any doubt. WWE knew fans were desperate for Sami and KO to finally get revenge and stand tall, but instead they booked the Bloodline to maintain dominance because that's what fit their long-term plan for Roman Reigns. It doesn't matter that it went against organic fan reaction, it doesn't matter that it deflated the crowd, it doesn't matter that it made the entire storyline feel pointless. All that matters is the tribal chief looks strong and continues his historic reign, even if it means sacrificing better stories and more compelling television in the process. The crazy thing is that people inside WWE had to know this wasn't working. They have to watch the shows, they have to see the crowd reactions, they have to read social media and see fans begging for Sami and KO to get their moment. But none of that matters because WWE operates in a bubble where they convince themselves they know better than the audience what the audience wants. It's the same arrogance that led to Roman being booed for years before he turned heel, the same arrogance that pushed Cena past his expiration date, the same arrogance that has caused countless stars to leave for other promotions where their talents are actually appreciated. WWE has this delusional belief that if they just keep pushing their chosen narrative hard enough, fans will eventually come around and accept it. Sometimes that works, but most of the time it just creates resentment and makes people tune out. And let's talk about what happened after this confrontation because the aftermath proves my point even better than the segment itself. The feud continued for a while, there were matches that ranged from good to great, but the emotional peak had already passed. By the time WWE finally pulled the trigger and gave Sami and KO their big victory, fans were less invested than they had been months earlier. The moment didn't hit as hard as it should have because WWE had dragged things out too long and booked too many deflating segments along the way. This May 26th confrontation was one of those deflating moments, a missed opportunity to create momentum and build to something truly special. Instead, it became just another forgettable SmackDown segment that hardcore fans might remember but casual viewers completely forgot about before the show even ended. You want to know why AEW and other promotions are taking chunks of WWE's audience? It's because they're willing to give fans what they want when they want it, not 6 months later after focus groups and corporate approvals and sponsor considerations. It's because they trust their performers to be themselves instead of forcing them into rigid corporate molds. It's because they understand that wrestling works best when it feels unpredictable and dangerous, not when every second is mapped out and sanitized for advertisers. WWE used to understand this too, back when they were actually competing and fighting for survival. But now that they're the dominant force with guaranteed money from television deals and Saudi Arabia shows, they've gotten lazy and complacent. They don't have to try anymore because fans will watch anyway, and this Bloodline confrontation with Sami and KO is exactly the kind of lazy, uninspired booking that results from that complacency. I'm so tired of watching WWE waste incredible talent and compelling stories because they're more concerned with protecting their corporate image than creating memorable moments. Sami Zayn deserved better, Kevin Owens deserved better, and most importantly, the fans who invested emotionally in this story deserved better than a paint-by-numbers confrontation that felt like it was written by algorithm. The bloodline at that point was still compelling because of Roman's presence and the family dynamics, but even they were being held back by WWE's refusal to take risks or do anything unexpected. Everyone just played their roles, said their lines, and collected their paychecks while the storyline slowly died from creative starvation. If you've stuck with this video until now, you're clearly someone who cares deeply about wrestling and wants to see it be better. You understand that loving wrestling means holding it to high standards, not blindly defending everything WWE does just because they're the biggest company. So here's what I need you to do. Drop a comment telling me your honest opinion about this bloodline confrontation and the Sami Zayn storyline overall. Did WWE fumble one of the best stories they've ever told? Should they have pulled the trigger earlier and given fans the payoff they wanted? Or am I completely wrong and this was all perfectly booked? I want to hear real opinions from real fans, not corporate talking points or people defending mediocrity because they're afraid to criticize WWE. Hit that like button if this video made you think differently about how WWE books their shows, subscribe if you want more honest wrestling commentary that doesn't sugarcoat the problems, and share this with anyone who needs to hear the truth about modern WWE storytelling. Because until fans start demanding better and holding WWE accountable for wasting our time and emotional investment, nothing is going to change. We have the power to influence this industry by being vocal about what works and what doesn't, but only if we're willing to be honest instead of pretending everything is fine.